How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports, another collab with myself and Dom Matassa of Sloppy Saturdays. Today, we're going to be talking some more NFL draft, kind of go through the draft again, talk about position groups that, were upgraded from this NFL draft for certain teams, the kind of impact that certain players will have with certain teams. So that'll be how we kind of run the show. Don't know how long we'll go, but it could vary between like a half hour to 2 hours, so we'll see. But Dami, how are we doing today on this Tuesday as we're recording
Doing
here?
good. Doing good. We said to you guys, I remember 2 months out from now that we were gonna go all in on the NFL draft. We did a lot previewing it. We're doing a lot post this next month over it. And it's a little challenging to talk about what we want to talk about and what we addressed and didn't address. Because obviously we got stuff out to you in different type of ways with live streams and stuff. We really have touched upon everything, but we really want to dive into everything and make sure we cover everything for every team because we know we got some fan specific teams on here that want to know their players. So we do want to address everything, but yeah, we're just going to keep on rolling with the draft content.
Yeah, definitely. So to kind of get things rolling, we were kind of we were trying to brainstorm what kind of angle to take with this episode, trying to think of a certain topic. So we came to the conclusion with this, and we were discussing, are we going to stick primarily with offense, which we probably will, but obviously want to incorporate defense as well. So I'll actually throw out a defensive player to start here. So I think one team that had to address the defensive side of the ball and get a pass rusher for their defense. And it was a team that, you go back to the COVID season, they had a very good pass rush that helped propel them to a championship, and that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I wanted to highlight Rueben Bain Jr. I think the Bucks, that is something that they had to address. They had to get a pass rusher for this defense. The offense was pretty good to start off the year, but kind of fell off due to injuries and guys kind of underperforming in the middle of the season that kind of led to a late season collapse. But with Todd Bowles as your head coach, a defensive minded head coach, they needed to kind of revamp this pass rush. And Ruben Bain was kind of somebody that you know fell a little bit in this draft, all the way down to 15. This past season, nine and a half sacks, 54 tackles. Also had a pick as well, and he was a part of that Miami defense that went all the way to the national championship game. So I think it was very important for the Bucks to address their defensive line because they need to get somebody that can get after the quarterback and kind of get their defense back to how it was. Not exactly how it was, during the COVID season when they won the Super Bowl, but just some within that area. So I did really like this pick, and hopefully the Bucks defense can benefit from that. Obviously, some longtime franchise guys left, and retired. So the defense obviously is not again what it was back then, but to try to rebuild this defense because I still think this offense is going to be pretty good. Baker Mayfield is healthy and the receiving core is still pretty good. Um, to me, again, this was a very important pick.
Yeah, my bad. You were lagging like a little bit, but I really like this pick for the Buccaneers. I
Uh,
think the Buccaneers have been like a little bit underrated on how they transition to things because they were a pretty old team when you look at a year or two ago, and they have transitioned and brought in people to make themselves again a little bit younger. And I think they're trying to get younger and younger. I think with Baker Mayfield again, he's at a pretty good age where you could kind of mold this roster either way you want to, with younger players or older players. And obviously, he's a veteran quarterback. But going over to Ruben Bain pick, and I heard it was either the owner or the GM say it. I don't know how he was there at 15. They had it as like a 1% chance that he was going to be there at 15 without them moving around, obviously. When you look at Ruben Bain and when you look at where he was at in the college football season, especially in the beginning, middle of college football season, this was a guy that was projected to go in the first three picks of the NFL draft. When you look at his career, he was a constant edge game record, developed a truly one position. He's a plug and play edge rusher. And I think the biggest thing, too, when you look at this drop, obviously you're going to look at a lot of things outside of him, whether it is with the short arms or whether it is with again, some legal issues with him. But I feel like the reasons why he dropped really has not much to do with how he's going to play on the field. And I think the biggest thing too is you're getting a player dropping this at like a premier position. Like we talk about in the NFL draft, if you're within the first 5 picks, if you're a rebuild the franchise, whatever the case may be, you're looking at either a quarterback or a guy to rush the quarterback. Those are the premier positions. So again, I feel like again when a player drops like this, it may be mistakes on the front end of certain teams. Not saying that any team in general, especially in the top of team, made like a massive mistake, but maybe it should have been Rueben Bain over some of these players. I think for like the Bucks to really get a player that could be part of their core for a while, that's this young, that should have never went at 15, that was supposed to be again a top 3 to 5 pick all throughout this college football season. And again, the other thing with Rueben Bain that I absolutely love that we continuously talk about on this podcast is like when you talk about offensive players, when you talk about defensive players, like are they getting empty production or does their production really translate on the impact of the total offense or total defense? Look at Ruben Bain, you could argue that he was the best player on a team that went to the national championship. And when we talked about that national championship run, me and you specifically, as you're getting more into college football and stuff, and obviously you always tune into the playoff games, we were talking about how throughout like before that Ole Miss game, really, we were talking about how Miami was really truly depending on defense, and Carson Beck was kind of making stuff happen, and they were running through the run game with Mark Fletcher. And I feel like Ruben Bain played great throughout the season. He played a pivotal part in that national championship stretch, where again, like I said, they didn't really have much on offense. When we saw the Texas A&M game, it was a 10-3 game. When we saw the Ohio State game, they got massive turnovers, ran the ball. So I think he was the best player on one of the best teams in the country. And his really, not only was he a great defensive player, it truly impacted that defense. I love this pick for the Bucks. I mean, how could you not? Like again, what are the biggest droppers? And we talked about a lot of steals. I feel like Ruben Bain was kind of the one. Like this is why I'm glad we're doing this episode. Kind of the one where we didn't get to talk about as much about, but this was a massive pick, and primarily it is because of how premier position he plays in that being a draft steal.
Yeah, and also when you look at the NFC South with the Falcons, there's kind of this quarterback competition between Penix and Tua. Tyler Shuck, I mean, I guess he's going to get the runway to be the starter. So there's kind of like an unknown there. Um, how he is going to translate over the course of a full season if he gets that opportunity. And then Bryce Young, we've talked about it quite a few times. Like he's definitely grown as a quarterback in this league. And obviously, the Panthers made the playoffs last year, so there's unknowns with the quarterback play, and to have a guy like this to bring in to get after these quarterbacks that maybe there's some question marks there. I think there is an advantage there for that, because I think if the Bucks, are clicking on all cylinders on both sides of the ball, and especially and obviously you could say there's some question marks with Baker Mayfield because he did kind of take a little bit of a step back, but you could also say it was because he was dealing with some injuries. I think the Bucks can definitely take this division back by the horns and show that they are still the best team. But yeah, their defense, especially late in games last year, we saw Tyler Shuck use his legs against them. Had a big rushing touchdown late in the in one of the games they played, the later season game in Tampa. And obviously the Falcons, late in that game in Tampa as well. The Bucks lost some close games last year, and had they had, a pass rush and obviously they needed to make some improvements in the secondary as well, they could be sitting here today at least saying like they won the division, and who knows what would have happened had they got to the playoffs. I mean, I don't think they would have gone that far, but a stop here and a stop there, and they would have been division champs and not the Panthers. So
I think I think the interesting thing with this division too, like we talk about all the time, anybody this year is really in play for that division, which is a little different than other years. There's usually one team that we know that isn't going to win the division. I think all 4 teams are really in play to win this division, and it's going to be one of those things like we always say with this division. One team's going to make it out, the division winner. There's going to be multiple teams coming out of the playoffs in this division. But I hope very different from last year. It's not just like something that we got to just give to somebody because they were at the top in that first place spot. Like I hope somebody truly earns it. I hope we get maybe a 10,
yeah, we don't
11
have
win team
anybody
out of
that
this
wins
division.
at like 8 and 9. Like
Yeah, like
we
that's
actually
what this
have a
division's
legitimate
been.
team win the division
That's
with
what
the
this
winning
division been
record.
like a lot of the times over the last 5 years. It's been, hey, somebody's gotta be in first place. You're the guy, and then you get blown out in the playoffs, or it's a huge spread to open the playoffs. Now the Panthers did actually really play the Rams good in that playoff game, but again, that opened up as a game where nobody really gave the Panthers any shot.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Again, the Bucks are definitely the team with the most success over the last 5 to 10 years in this division. But I think every team really has a fair shot. Every team has, you know, an outlook, positive outlook, negative outlook. Like you said, the Bucks are kind of transitioning. It's gonna be interesting to see even like a Mecca Ibuka. Like he started out the season really hot. Then we saw him without Mike Evans and him being the guy to really game plan for, and it looked a lot different towards the end. So it's gonna be interesting to see this receiving core. Obviously, it's young with Tez Johnson and Jalen McMillan as well, and a couple other guys. But again, everybody we talked about, like the Saints, we really like what they're doing. They built that offense completely around Tyler Shuck, two massive playmakers they bring in Jordan Tyson and Etienne, and they have Kamara and they have Olave. It's going to be interesting to see how he progresses. And Kellen Moore seems like he really knows what he's doing there. And then the Panthers, obviously the Panthers are on the rise. Bryce Young has been looking better and better and better over the last year. It's going to be interesting to see them. And then I think the like I said, from a total roster standpoint, probably the most talented roster, but they can't figure out the main position, which could definitely hold them back. So everybody has a shot in this division, but I'm just hoping we get an actual playoff team out of the division.
Yeah, I mean, and again for me, I mean, you could call me out for a little bit of bias because I'm a Baker Mayfield fan, but the Bucks before kind of that midseason collapse, I mean, they were legitimately playing like a very good team. I mean, you had people saying Baker Mayfield was an MVP candidate. That's how good he was playing. And then, things kind of just got derailed, close to midseason. So, but we'll see. I mean, again, the Saints are definitely improving. We were surprised by the level of play by Tyler Shuck, and they added Jordan Tyson, they added Travis Etienne or Travis Etienne is his name apparently. So, to go along with Olave and Kamara, Kellen Moore with that team, they kind of overachieved because it looked like they were going to have one of the worst records in football, and that didn't end up happening. So, and yeah, like you said, I mean, the Falcons, their skill position players, you could argue that's probably the best set of players, on offense in this division.
And they could
It's
have
just
the
going to
best
come down.
defense in the division.
Yeah. So it's just good. Again, like you said, it's the most important position, the quarterback position. It's going to come down to that. And you got two guys that, Tua, this is, now maybe one of his last chances to kind of prove that he's a starting quarterback. And then even Michael Penix with the injury concerns, we really haven't gotten a fair evaluation on Penix. So
I mean, they're going to be in a very weird situation if things don't work out for them this year, because when you look at the Falcons, like no matter what happens with that quarterback position, they're going to be too talented enough to be in a top 3, 5 pick scenario. They're probably going to be in the back end of the top 10. And then also at the same time, like we looked crazy. We looked at Bijan and Drake London, and we've talked about them all throughout their careers in college and the NFL. Now these guys almost are like veterans at this point, going into the next year after that. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like they might be in kind of like a Steelers limbo type of situation where if they can't get an older quarterback on the market, they're not going to be able to draft one. They're like this team may never hit its actual ceiling.
yeah, and I mean, there's no like it's amazing at the beginning of the 2010s, like you had Peyton Manning was a free agent. You had all these guys that you wouldn't have expected. Like you thought they were going to finish out their careers with certain teams. Like obviously Rodgers now recently has been with a couple of different teams. We saw Brady change teams. Philip Rivers changed teams. Stafford changed teams. Like I'm trying to think. Like is there a guy? Not obviously. We're talking about some of the all-time greats, but someone with that caliber, a veteran quarterback that potentially could be on the move. I mean, I guess Joe Burrow's name's kind of been thrown out there a couple times, with the, kind of his frustration with the Bengals, the growing frustration there, but also like you could say kind of was his fault in certain respects just because, he wanted to get both of his top guys paid. Um, you know, so I'm trying to think. So like, yeah, I mean, like for the Falcons, I mean, if it doesn't work out with these two guys, what's the plan after that?
I
So
mean,
they got
yeah,
the
I
roster
don't.
to compete.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't even know how it works out. Where like if Joe Burrow were to get traded or somebody else, like to trade for that player that's making that kind of money to match the cap and everything like that. Like that's why it's just so hard.
And yeah,
Usually
and
it's
you're gonna
like
give
on
up draft
aftermarket
capital to get him,
quarterback.
yeah.
Like it's just tough, and I don't know. Like Burrow could be a possibility. We see if this year. I think again, if they have another similar year, I don't think he's staying in Cincinnati. I think he maybe has like a 2 year window there. If they turn it around, completely different. But I mean, yeah, I really think it's definitely more on Cincinnati than Joe Burrow when you're going off of the blame. But he has to take a side to the pie too. I mean, if you're never on the field, it's just the
Yeah.
team is just never gonna win. And
Mhm.
again, he's been one of the most injured players in the NFL. But yeah, I really don't know what it's going to be like. The opportunities are going to be like for the Falcons again. It may be one of these situations where the best quarterback is Malik Willis like this year, and you're going to have to go for that because that's all you got.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have done that this year, but I think again with the limited time with Penix and stuff, and again the talent of quarterback market there, I think it made sense to give him one more year before jumping on something else, and they go for I guess a low risk option in Tua. Everybody just doesn't like it, obviously, because you see the glaring similarities, and there's not much upside getting putting like two of the same quarterbacks in the same room.
Yeah. No, definitely. So, I guess we'll kinda switch gears a little bit. We talked a little bit about this player, before we started recording here. So, I do wanna talk about the running backs. We're not gonna talk about Jeremiah Love because 'cause we've done plenty of that, but I do wanna talk about what the Seahawks did and taking Jadarian Price from Notre Dame with the final pick in the first round. Now, it seems like it was kind of a reach. For me, it does make I mean, it kinda makes sense why the Seahawks did that because 'cause you're looking for that replacement for Kenneth Walker, and also the Seahawks just won the Super Bowl. I mean, they did lose some guys on the defense, which I thought maybe they could have, addressed a hole there, but they didn't with their first pick. Instead, they went more so with the offense, and also and with that position. And also on top of that, Zach Charbonnet got hurt late in the year, so he's not going to be 100%, to come back right away to start the year. I don't know what the timetable is with Charbonnet. So right now, the Seahawks running back room is kind of thin, kind of up in the air. Um, I know you can obviously dive more into the player himself, but yeah, for me, like the pick did kind of make sense just because of what the current situation, the current landscape with Seattle's backfield is. Um, and obviously, we saw the previous year, that was a deep running back class. We saw running backs, flying off the board. This class is kind of different. Obviously Jeremiah Love was the talk of the town because of the prospect that he is and the talent that he possesses. He ends up going within the division, but yeah. And just to kind of give you Price's stats from 2025. So 11 rushing touchdowns, had 674 rushing yards in his final season with Notre Dame. I mean, the Seahawks are a team that does love to run the football. I mean, we saw that, and they like to, incorporate play action a lot, get Darnold on the move too. So, obviously, and it works well for Darnold to have a running game, and that's part of the reason why he was so successful last year. And also, he kind of took matters into his own hands at times. Played the best game of his life. We both said the NFC Championship game. He won that game for the Seahawks. Kenneth Walker obviously produced for them very well in the postseason. So Seattle's kind of got to shuffle around their running back room, and we'll see how Price does in this position. But the Seahawks, like I said, they're going to be a team that is going to run the football plenty of times.
Yeah, I I really didn't like the Darian Price pick at all. I talked about how much I disliked it. It came at a kind of weird time. Um, Not to dive in too much of what we were doing personally, but like we were somewhere for a while. It was a thing where all New York sports were going off at the same time, and obviously this was the last pick in the draft. If it was like happened early, which again I don't think he could have went any earlier. I don't think he should have went where he went. But if it was something where it would have happened where we were a little more alive, probably would have been a little bit better of a reaction. But yeah, I thought definitely Jadarian Price was one of the biggest head scratchers for me in this entire draft. Now I do think when you rank the running backs, I want to get this very clear. When you rank the running backs in this draft class, if I had to rank them, I would probably put Jadarian Price as the next back after Jeremiah Love. But that does not mean that Jeremiah Love, since he's the second back in this class, that he's a first round pick or a second round pick. That's just the way the depth of this running back class is. Again, I said time and time again, I think Jeremiah Love obviously is close to a generational talent you could get. But after that, I thought there should be no running backs taken within the first 2 rounds. The class did not have the depth. I do Jadarian Price is a really good player. I think when you look at the running backs after Jeremiah Love, he could probably do it all. I think the eye popping thing for me is when you look at his receiving, 6 receptions, 4 receptions, 5 receptions. He only has 15 receptions in his whole college career. But I think throughout this process of this draft process, and especially after as well, watching something from Seattle's practices and stuff before as well on Notre Dame's pro day, I really do think he could be at least a viable pass catching weapon in this offense. I think the odd thing too for Jadarian Price, you look at him only having 280 carries in college football. Obviously, it comes with the offense he was playing in, the running back he played behind, all of that. We understand that. Don't gotta dive into it too much, but it's kind of like how you look at it: glass half full, glass half empty. Do you look at that as like, hey, we got this running back now that could maybe extend his window a lot further because he doesn't have enough miles on him, or do you look at it as like, we don't even know if this running back could really be a 1A in an offense? It depends how you look at it. But again, I look at it as more of like, this running back does have this extension of this window. The Jadarian Price situation is a little weird to me as well. Again, I talked about it. Seattle definitely lost stuff on their defense. Their defense was dominant last year. I thought they were going to go with something in the front seven, possibly in the secondary, that could help them a little bit more, and that was a player graded a little bit higher. But when you look at Zach Charbonnet coming off that massive injury, Jadarian Price in the season, it's usually the opposite with a running back. It's usually you see a running back or whatever, any rookie, kind of ease in their first couple weeks, then get more of the workload through the second half. But what Seattle has in that room right now, it's going to be the flip side. Jadarian Price is going to have way more on his plate to me, possibly in the beginning. And then when Charbonnet comes back, it's going to be more of a split. So that's a really odd fit as well. But like I said, I would have took Jadarian Price second with this running back class. But I also look at like an Emmett Johnson to the Chiefs that got drafted in the 5th round. That was everything for Nebraska. A guy that was able to have 1,400 yards, a guy that was able to catch the football, a guy with burst. And you're splitting hairs with him and Jadarian Price, and it's a difference of almost 4 rounds between the two. That's what I thought the difference was. I think Jadarian Price, again, the program that develops running backs at a top spot, his mileage, his ability to, I think, be more of a receiver than people think. Definitely think he should have been the second running back taken. But comparison to the other running backs he was grouped with, to take this guy in the 1st round and the running backs other people got in the 4th, 5th round just didn't make sense to me at all. I don't see really anybody after Jeremiah Love being a bell cow running back in this draft. I just don't see it. Again, he could be a good compliment with Kenneth Walker. They could be a 1A, 1B type of thing. But I don't know. This pick was, and again, we saw Seattle do this before. We saw them take Charbonnet a year or two after they took Kenneth Walker, and Kenneth Walker was really good. So I don't know. I don't know. Seattle with running backs, I haven't been a fan of it. This is like the second time I really haven't been much of a fan of it.
Yeah, and I mean, you could also say, well, I mean, they did that and they eventually, won the Super Bowl last year. So, and but I mean, and obviously, their defense and obviously how Darnold played. But like I said, Kenneth Walker
I
played
mean,
really
also won
well.
a Super Bowl without Charbonnet because he
Yeah.
wasn't even
Well,
playing.
yeah, that is true. That is true. I forget who they had as the second running back to Kenneth Walker when Charbonnet got hurt. But anyways, I mean, look, and you kind of just, you open up that conversation with the running back position, how, certain teams, they don't maybe necessarily value that position. I mean, the Seahawks were willing to just let Kenneth Walker, go to the Chiefs and not give him that big contract because they figured, hey, we can replace him. Even though he won Super Bowl MVP, they figured that they could replace that production to an extent. Um, and they feel like that was the right pick there. But if Price didn't go to Seattle, where do you think where did you have him ranked? Well, not I know you obviously ranked the running backs, but where did you kind of have him, going in this draft? Would you have him, going in the 2nd round, maybe a little bit after that? Where did you have him going?
I would have probably had him more towards the 3rd round. If he would have got picked in the late 2nd round, I wouldn't have thrown a fit. But I also thought, again, a team that was in play for a running back that didn't really get one, that is trying to compete right now. I was like kind of surprised. Jaguars. I thought they were a team that could
Yeah,
have been in the mix for a
yeah,
running
because
back,
I don't think they added anybody, in free agency either.
and they're gonna go with Tuden and I forgot the other guy. He's
Allen,
a late sixth rounder, yeah. But
yeah,
but they don't really have anything in the running back room again. They're depending on their offense to be like kind of plug and play with that
mhm.
position because their offense should be really, really good. They were a team I was expecting, but yeah, I was expecting it to be like late second, third round. And it's so funny. I wanted to bring this up too, talking about Jadarian Price. It's so funny, like how much of a copycat league the NFL is, and how much like the league goes through trends. Because if you remember, like back before, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, before Saquon won the Super Bowl with the Eagles, everybody was like off of running backs. Like running back was that
Yeah,
position, like safety, where like we talked about Caleb Downs being a generational prospect and still going 12, where like it was like a stigma where like this running back was arguably the best player or one of the best players in this draft, you had to wait to select him. And like I think it's so funny too, because when you look at certain people that went, like you look at like Brees Hall that went in the second round to the Jets, like, just as a prospect coming out. Like the difference between him and Jadarian Price as prospects is massive. And it was just like the time of certain things. And then you look at like I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's the same thing with like these like quarterbacks are always intangibles. When you look at Anthony Richardson going really high, and when you look at again Josh Allen, it worked out for them, but him going really high, and then you look at guys like Taylor Green and Drew Aller going like a lot later. It's just like everything with the NFL is just like copycat league, and it's like off of like immediate results and trends how things go. So I think that's funny as well. Like we looked at this running back position 3 4 years ago as like everybody wanted to stay off running backs no matter how great they were. And when like again, it started to shift a little bit when Bijan and Gibbs went, rightfully so. But they were like, "Oh, you're taking Gibbs this high? Guy's one of the best players in the NFL." Now people see that they want to go running backs high again. Like Jadarian Price, if I would have talked about a running back getting drafted too high years ago, like that conversation would have never happened. So I think that's funny as well. But yeah, I thought Jadarian Price second or third rounder. And again, like I said, I thought the difference between him, Emmett Smith, him, Nick Singleton, and stuff like I would have way rather if Seattle addressed that need in the fifth round, fourth round. Again, especially because you are going to have Charbonnet at that time as well. It's not like you're in a pinch, like you have like absolutely nothing in that room. And again, in the front end, you want a guy, I guess, that could help you out, get off to a good start. But it's just to draft a running back in the first round that you don't see being a bell cow running back in his future. Like that's something I almost never heard before.
yeah, and like I said, I mean, and like we've talked about, I mean, they lost, quite a few players, in the secondary and also the pass rush as well. So I thought, that it was kind of a given that they were gonna take a defensive player with their first pick, but they elected to go with running back, and that's kind of one of those positions, at least for Seattle. Again, played a pivotal role in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, where, like you said, like you can afford to kind of wait and take that position later in the draft and kind of address, more important positions that, you lost some guys out on in free agency, but they they decided not to do that.
Like
So,
I'm on the thing too. Like again, I do think running back is a position if you're forming your team, yeah, ideally it should be one of the last positions you look at. But also at the same time, like again, if it's like best player available, like Jeremiah Love, obviously phenomenal talent, and Bijan Robinson, all these guys, Saquon Barkley got drafted really high. Like it's hard to hate on it in that sense, but again, we're not even like with that with Jadarian Price. We're just like again, he probably should have went lower. He was mocked to go lower. And it's like to take a position that we think is kind of like an afterthought position when you're building a roster, and for that player to not even be best player available at that pick, head scratcher to me.
yeah, so we'll have to see how it all plays out, but I know I've kind of thrown some players at you. Are there any other players that, maybe we haven't necessarily talked about, or maybe players that you wanna dive into more that, you wanna talk about their impact with certain position groups with their NFL team now? Is there anybody you have, in mind that you would like to bring to the table?
You're kind of putting me a little on the spot. I wasn't expecting that turnaround. Let's see.
I mean, I could throw other players out. I could throw other players out there, but
let me get a second. Let me get a second. Um, who did I want to talk about? I I do I talked about him more on my end, but I do want to talk about him more on your end and give your opinion because I've talked about him solo. We talked about it a little bit together, obviously as high as he went. Because again, I have like the first round out because we didn't even really dive into the second round yet. I wanted to talk about we dove into the division a little bit, and I think it's more of just like how this player could impact this team long term and what they're building on offense. I wanted to talk about Jordan Tyson a little bit and his fit with the New Orleans Saints because I think when you look at a lot of quarterbacks that we discuss, first year, second year quarterbacks, and teams make certain moves, it tells you a lot about what they think about that quarterback. Now, there's no doubt Kellen Moore is an offensive guy. He could just want playmakers in his offense. But I think for you to go out and sign a ETN for the massive money you did, and then have the eighth pick and also add something else on that offense as well, to me, it tells like you have extreme confidence in Tyler Shuck. You don't think what Tyler Shuck did in the second half of last season is a fluke. The other thing I do want to get your opinion on as well, and I feel like there's a very good chance that it could go either way because both of them I don't feel like, again, you could argue concussions with Olave, but I feel like both of them don't have like massive injuries that will really impact their long-term career in the NFL or impact how they are on the field in the immediate. It's interesting to me that you pair up a receiver in Jordan Tyson with another receiver in Chris Olave that are very seems to be injury prone, even though we don't like to use that word. So it's going to be interesting to see if those two guys can stay on the field at the same time. But I think when you look at talent, downfield ability, guys that could play all over the field, every receiver position, you're looking at two diverse guys. Then you look at the running back room with Etienne and Kamara. I talked about it. Oddly enough, two guys that I felt like when Etienne was coming out, we like compared him to Kamara. Two guys with similar abilities there, but guys that could play all over the field, play at the same time, diverse of pass catchers they are. I think the Saints offense is really like looking at it similar to how we and a lot of people look at it. Like, hey, if we really make these moves like right now, we could win this division right now. Like that's how open this is. So I think Jordan Tyson is going to be really good. I think they put Tyler Shuck in a spot that you don't normally see from second round quarterbacks going essentially all in with him. And to have two guys that could be wide receiver ones in the NFL, like I said, run pretty good routes, play all over the field, outside, inside, be a downfield threat ability with two good running backs. I think it says a lot about the Saints right now and what they think of Tyler Shuck.
Yeah, I mean, going off the injury thing, when it comes to Olave and the concussions, I'd feel like he's either not necessarily his fault, but he's kind of just he's gotten put into situations where he's in harm's way and he takes a vicious hit, and so much so that you start thinking, his career over, and hasn't had stability with the quarterback position either. I mean, now they're kind of hoping that it is Tyler Shuck. Again, like you said, adding Jordan Tyson to the fold, adding Travis Etienne to the fold now, the Saints are starting to kind of build something back up on offense. And yeah, I mean, you are taking a bit of a gamble. I mean, I think anytime, you have two receivers, your top two receivers, they have an injury history, an extensive injury history, there's no reason to say like there's not going to be a gamble. There is, but also it could pay off in a big way. If both these guys are healthy and Jordan Tyson can have a big rookie year and be very impactful with this offense and be a good running mate with Kamara, it could be the kind of that 1A and 1B in this offense. And then you add, ETN and Kamara coming out of the backfield. Also Juwan Johnson as the tight end, not a bad pass catcher there. It's kind of been, their top target at times in this offense because the receiving core is pretty thin. The Saints kind of have something going there. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. I mean, the division is kind of there for the taking, and if Tyler Shuck can continue to build off of last year, and now you add another receiver, you add another running back, and this running game can get even better. your offense can be pretty decent. I also said this too. I think also with ETN, Kamara, I think, worked well when he had somebody else in that backfield, and I feel like that's going to help him. I know Kamara's obviously up there in age now, but I think it's still being impactful, and obviously, more as a pass catcher. And ETN had a pretty good bounce back year with the Jags, so now we'll kind of get to see how it looks, in a new system. But um, yeah, I mean, if both these guys are healthy, and you talked very highly of both receivers, Olave and Tyson now going to be entering his rookie year. Like I said, they got something pretty good with their receiving core, which again has kind of been lacking for quite a few years. So, like I said, there's kind of a gamble when you got some guys there that typically get hurt, find themselves you know not playing. Their availability is in question, but again, if it pays off, it's good for obviously their quarterback that they seem to believe in going into year 2 now.
Yeah, I think the other interesting too is thing is like I think it could work with how diverse they are. But when you look at like a Kamara and you look at ETN, like especially when you look at Kamara and like the blueprint of like the running back you want behind those guys, it's usually like a thumper, like a short yardage situation, a red zone guy. Like we've seen Mark Ingram, Latavius Murray. So I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how creative Kellen Moore could be with those two guys that are able to play on the field at the same time. That's gonna be interesting to me. But yeah, like I said, the Saints are a team that the division's wide open for. I just think it more just shows like, hey, we think Tyler Shuck is the guy. Like, I don't think this is all like, Kellen Moore's an offensive coordinator at heart. We're gonna add stuff in because he's such an offensive guy. I think you really build an offense like this and make these moves right now with pick with like a premium pick at 8 and premium money to ETN. You're saying that you believe in your quarterback, which I think is rare. Like I said, I think that's rare for a quarterback drafted in the second round of the year. This isn't Cam Ward, who was drafted first pick last year, and you add in Cardinal Tate for him. This is a guy that was in the second round. So I think that's interesting. Another thing I wanted to talk about with you, we talked about it briefly because now you got my mind running after throwing it back to me. But I thought Carson Beck is going to be extremely interesting as well. We did discuss this briefly because how could we not discuss this briefly when we talked about Jeremiah for 20 hours already combined? So when we talk about Carson Beck, I think this situation is almost like very delicate, but I see at the same time Carson Beck coming in for this Cardinals team very early. We talk about it with this 2027 draft class, how great the quarterbacks are going to be in this 2027 draft class, how everybody's waiting for this class at all positions. It almost seems like we do this every year. Like this year, it seems to really be the year if you have these picks. These are the picks people are waiting for the last 2 years. So with Carson Beck, them drafting him in the top of the third round with enough capital to say, hey, we're going to give this guy a realistic shot. And then you look at Carson Beck at the same time and his college football career, him being a long-term college football quarterback and 2 pro-style offenses that he found success in both of them. This is a guy that can come in pretty early. This is a guy you look at like a Jaden Daniels, like a Bo Nix, of guys with long-term experience in the NFL that should theoretically translate early. Obviously, those guys were drafted a lot higher. But again, Carson Beck was looked at one point to be a first overall pick, a first-round pick. No doubt the talent and the intangibles are there. Now, for the Cardinals, you get in this weird spot. You build this offense to be a really good offense, and you don't have a quarterback to plop it into. For the Cardinals, they're going to be in this very weird spot to figure out at what point do we see if Carson Beck can be our quarterback of the future before we could possibly dive into this 2027 draft class. Because there's a very good chance, knowing this Cardinals roster, again, I don't know where their ceiling is. It could very well be the first overall pick, that they could be a top end pick in this draft class. So they're going to have to put Carson Beck in at a pivotal point where it gives him enough runway to show he's the guy, or we got to go in the 2027 draft class. So this pick is like almost a little odd to me. And I do think it's one of those picks. Jacoby Brissett wants more money. They haven't given it to him yet. I really don't think they should. And I think Carson Beck should come in fairly early, not only because of them needing to know if they got to dip in the 2027 draft class or not, because it's so special. They got to figure out they can do it because this guy was a guy that has more experience in college football than almost any other quarterback that has came out with the two offenses and everything. So that is like very interesting to me. I want to know, like, again, obviously your thoughts on it, and at the same time, when would you like to see Carson Beck?
Yeah, so I think like you mentioned and we've mentioned it, is the amount of football that he played in college. I think that is a huge advantage for him, and playing in a lot of big games in his college career, and most recently played in the national championship game against Indiana. And it is going to be a true test for him when he does step in because of the division that he's going to be playing in. With Seattle's defense, the Rams defense are going to be going up against, and the 49ers defense, obviously, injuries kind of, made their defense suffer. But, you're going to have Bosa back and Fred Warner back, I'm assuming. So you're going to have that. And, those teams also have high powered offenses as well. So it is going to be tough. He is going to get brought in at some point. The Cardinals season it's not going to go well. They aren't going to win a lot of games, but also because, again, you know, the division you're playing in, and, Jacoby Brissett, although I think he, is a good backup to have, Jacoby Brissett and the Cardinals are not going to win a lot of games. And, Carson Beck, offensively, he's stepping into, a situation where you're going to have a few good pass catchers. You're going to have a top pick in Jeremiah Love coming out of the backfield where, you could find some success there. So I think he will get put in early. I would say it could be as early as, you know, 2, 3 games into the season he's brought in. I mean, maybe he wins the job out of camp. He performs well in preseason and they think, "Hey, you know what? Let's see what we have," because, next year there's gonna be a deeper class that we could go and draft. And the Cardinals kinda were in a similar situation when they drafted Josh Rosen, and, then they immediately were like, "All right, we're bailing on this," and going they had a chance to get Kyler Murray, which they did, but now obviously Kyler Murray is now with the Vikings, so didn't really work out. Um, so I kinda see that playing out. I think Carson Beck is going to, get an opportunity to play early on in the season, and then we'll kinda get a sense on, what the Cardinals think depending on what their record is, and obviously, how well he plays. But it's not like he'd be stepping into a situation offensively where, he doesn't have the weapons around him. I think the offensive line is in question, and obviously we'll see how the defense is, but, um, the skill position players are there, for him to be successful. So
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I was hoping, like you kind of said what you said, and maybe we're gonna be overreacting to some listeners. I would love to see Carson Beck within the first 4 weeks. I think you get to a certain point with some of these rookie quarterbacks. Kind of felt the same way with the Giants last year, although it's a very different situation where you have these veterans in place, but like we know what these veterans are. We know you're not winning anything with Jacoby Brissett, and at the same time, Carson Beck is in a position where, hey, listen, it isn't the best situation you would want to be in out of every single team in the NFL of all 32 teams, but it isn't a situation where it's like, hey, like he's throwing the situation. It's so bad he has no chance to ever succeed in it. Like you said, the skill positions are great, and like I said, I feel like it's a perfect pairing because how we just emphasize his college football resume is so long. He's going to be more NFL ready than somebody who hasn't played the amount that he did in the pro offenses and everything. So I think again, to really get a good hard look at this guy, and also at the same time with these skill positions that the Cardinals have, if Carson Beck turns out to be what we once thought he could be, maybe this team does have a shot to be a solid team this year. Again, the team isn't that bad for a lot of these teams. We talk about it. They're just missing the most important position. But if Carson Beck comes in, has a great rookie year, maybe they'll be a lot better than people think. And then you really find out that you have your guy in this offense and whatever. And like I said, he's a 6'4" quarterback. He could throw all over the field. He showed his ability this year to run a lot more than he ever has. So he has the skill set. It's just being more consistent, obviously, within the numbers. But I think, again, Cardinals are in a very, I don't even want to say difficult situation because it seems like me and you are on the same page. Like, it really isn't that difficult at all. These veteran quarterbacks should not be starting a lengthy amount throughout the season. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I do agree with that because again, what are you doing with Jacoby Brissett? You know, and again, you have this quarterback class next year that, you could be looking towards if it doesn't work out with Carson Beck. So you kinda wanna get a sense of what you have with him now. So then you have to make that decision, with the draft next year, but, we'll see. We'll see how it goes, and like I said, he could even win the job out of camp, if they feel like he's ready. I mean, we saw it with remember when the Seahawks threw a lot of money at Matt Flynn and they drafted Russell Wilson, and then Russell Wilson won the job out of camp. I mean, that's just one example of many examples you could use, but that's just one I think of that comes to mind. Russell Wilson started from day one, so
I
it
think
could be the same thing with Carson Beck too.
I think it's 100% possible. I think again, you're not looking at a traditional third round pick when you talk about the hype and everything around him in college football and the experiences that he went to. I mean, we were talking about 2, 3 years ago him possibly coming out in the Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels draft class and being a top pick there. Like with those guys that came out, he was arguably the best quarterback in college football because that's how great his season was for arguably the best team in college football that year. So again, you're talking about a guy that's just been like so looked at over these last years. It just doesn't feel like a traditional guy that you would draft in the third round, like to me.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. Any other and again I kind of caught you off guard, but any other players you want to talk about briefly before we wrap it up here?
Um, I don't know. Do you feel
Carson
like
Beck
there's
wa
any?
Carson Beck was a big one. Let's I mean, I was kinda going through, some of the Bills picks, taking TJ Parker, they kept trading down, and then they took him with the 35th pick. That was their first selection. 'Cause the Bills defense is another one of those units that kinda needed improvement there. And then also, taking a receiver later in the draft as well. I mean, they did acquire DJ Moore this offseason, which obviously you're not a huge fan of that, but between the pass rush and the receiving core, those were kind of two position groups that definitely needed some upgrading with the Bills there. Um, they didn't have 1,000-yard receiver last year. I mean, mainly they're relying upon Josh Allen and James Cook to kind of, be the engine for this offense, and rightfully so. With Josh Allen being one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and James Cook being one of the best running backs in the NFL. So I guess what were your kind of your thoughts on those the two picks with TJ Parker and the receiver they took, Skylar Bell?
I mean, I didn't mind the picks of what they did in the first round. I guess I should say they kind of got caught in a weird spot. I thought again after you don't get like one of those three receivers. Like they didn't make the move to trade up to Makai Lemon like the Eagles did. You didn't get one of those three receivers. Kenyon Sadiq was on the board, even though you just have a ton of tight ends. So that would kind of be a weird fit. I guess the only move was to really trade down. I love TJ Parker. I've said that. I think his ability to play the edge and set the line and kind of be like a linebacker as well. I think again it's perfect for the modern day NFL. I thought he was a player that the program kind of made him slip a little bit more because the program had massive expectations that they didn't deliver to. I also like Davison Igabusen as well out of Ohio State. I thought that was a good cornerback selection. Again, you're getting a guy from a premier program, a guy that's been a starter for them for the last 2.5 years. So I like that pick too. Again, they obviously needed help on defense. I mean, I thought they needed help honestly for a team that's always deep in the playoffs. I thought they needed help in a lot of places. Like obviously Josh Allen covers a lot of those holes throughout the course of an NFL season. I mean, I'm not in love with their draft. Again, maybe now it hasn't even been a thought in my head, but maybe if they were a team like the Eagles did, could have got up for Makai Lemon. I thought
Mhm.
that would have been good. I just again I don't even want to dive into it too much because it isn't what this episode really is about. But when you
Well,
look at
did you
last
like that they
year,
kept trading down?
yeah, I mean, I thought it was a smart move. I mean, they got like two fourths, two fifths, and it's like you're grouping these picks to take
Yeah.
shots to really get to move down not that much. It ended up being like 8 or 9 total picks for a player that you probably would have had at your board in the original pick because we talk about how volatile those 20 to 40 spots are with those like fringe first rounders. So I liked it. I like building up more capital, take more shots. I'm not really a big fan of Skylar Bell. I don't think he's going to translate into the NFL. Playing for UConn, I'm not really a huge fan of his. But yeah, it's just like with the Bills, we've said it. Obviously they made a horrible move for DJ Moore. I think a lot of people are in alignment of that, even Bills fans. Like a guy that had 600 yards last year, guy that isn't a wide receiver one to trade a second round pick for him. It just doesn't make sense. And a lot of people thought he could have been bought out and they could have got him for no capital. But yeah, I just think the Bills, and I don't want to even dive into it too much. Like last year, I thought was their shot.
Oh yeah, no. Ben and I talked about it last week. We brought
Like
it
it's
up.
not what this podcast is about, but like I don't know. Are you going into this year, especially the way the AFC is, and teams gotten better, and I don't think you guys got better. Is it their shot? No. I
No,
again I don't
I
hate
mean
or
I
love
think
what the Bills did. It's just
yeah.
their
I
position
mean
is low.
I
And
think they're obviously going to be a contender, but like you said, and I talked about it last week with Ben, that was their shot, and now like teams got better, and I like you didn't have the Chiefs standing in your way, and also I mean Josh Allen was the reason they lost that game, which you usually don't say that in a playoff game. You usually blame it on the kicker, you blame it on the defense not getting a stop, and the defense didn't get stops at times. But Josh Allen, to me, with the turnovers, he single-handedly lost that game. And the proof is in the press conference he had after the game where he was crying because he knew, like, I screwed up. I did not play well. So it's tough. It's tough, but I mean, will they get over the hump at some point? I mean, we say that every year, you know,
it's
and
just
last year
like
it felt like that was the chance for them, but now you're kind of like,
it's
I don't
just
know.
the state of Josh Allen is in his football career. He isn't going to get much better, if better at all. Like
He's gonna get worse
it's kind of like
as
he's
he
in
gets
like
older.
the middle of his prime. And with him, Lamar, we talked about it. Like if those teams aren't getting better, your best shots we may look at were in the past.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the Bills this year. I think there are definitely a lot of other contenders, a lot of teams that got better, and just a lot of teams where they have really great quarterbacks, really good quarterbacks. Maybe not quarterbacks as great as a Josh Allen, but they have really good
Well, look at
quarterbacks
the
that
team
can
that
take
beat
them to
them
Super
last
Bowl,
year, Bo
and
Nix.
they're a much better roster, and I'll give
Yeah.
them more of a shot. So I don't really like. I mean, there wasn't much that the Bills could do. Again, if you were going to get creative, they were going to be a team that traded after Mekhi Lemon, different story. But
Mhm.
like at their spot, there wasn't much they could do. They traded back, which was again, I've really never seen anything like it. Like just trade back multiple times. But
Yeah.
I mean, I like that you get extra capital, you take a shot. But what they have in this offense and these defense got to be immediate playmakers. Like again, they're going to be a 10+ win team with Josh Allen, but I don't know if they're going to be a team that I was as high on as I was once before. I also wanted to talk to you about Jermon McCoy a little more because we talked about Jermon McCoy a lot in our lives. He was a hot topic in our lives. I thought it was a very interesting pick because, again, I don't want to say like Shador Sanders or whatever, but definitely the biggest dropper in this class. A guy that when we were doing our mocks, we did our mocks twice, and I'm pretty sure me and you both had him in the first round. Then we look, he doesn't go the whole entire day one. Other quarterbacks go over him. That isn't Mansour Delane. There was Chris Johnson, and I think another cornerback that may have went over him too. Yeah, Devin. No. Sorry. I don't know. Was there
Yeah,
another
'cause he went.
quarterback?
Yeah, 'cause he went in the fourth round.
Yeah, he went in the fourth round, but I was saying in the first round. But there were definitely multiple cornerbacks that went over him, and he had an argument to be one of the best cornerbacks, if not the best cornerback in this draft. Like guaranteed first round pick, played great at Tennessee. Obviously, he was injured a little bit last year and it lingered on it through this off season. But I wanted to talk about again. I feel like, and I've discussed this in a previous podcast, where it's very similar to fantasy football, real life drafts, whatever. I'm willing to take almost any player at the right spot. It's just if the spot is right. Now, when you look at Jermon McCoy being this lockdown corner in his college football career, being really able to play the ball in press coverage, and that cornerback position being one of those positions, like if you develop that position, it's extremely valuable because it doesn't happen often for you to get a guy in the first round, and they get every team wanted to stay off of him 3 times almost, which isn't a great sign. But you get a first round talent in the fourth round. I feel like again that spot was a great
And they
spot for the Raiders
actually,
to
I
take
was
him.
looking just now, they took a corner, uh, in the second round. They took a trade in Stukes from Arizona, so they even addressed the position, before they, took Jermon McCoy in the 4th round. So but the
Yeah,
Raiders are one of those teams where, like, they have a lot of holes, so they're taking best player available at certain positions.
he's a little bit he's diverse. He played a lot of safety at Arizona, but I'm like
Mhm.
looking at what I'm looking at now, and I expect him to be a nickel corner trade in Stukes for Raiders. So yeah, I mean, again for the Raiders, I think it's just building enough capital, like building enough good picks around Fernando Mendoza to eventually try to compete in that division. We all know how tough that's going to be.
It's gonna take a while, though.
But I think again, even if you get this guy, maybe has a high ceiling but a short career due to this injury or whatever the case may be, I think like the juice was worth the squeeze. Definitely in like the fourth
Yeah, no, you're
round.
taking a gamble, but if it pays off, like we were talking about with, you know, how with the Saints before, if it pays off, you got a cornerstone piece for years to come, and especially at a
Yeah,
position that's very important. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but, any last minute remarks before we wrap up?
yeah, I think I'm good. I think also too, we went a little long in depth on some of these players. So I do think we could definitely do. You guys could definitely look out another episode, kind of like just like this, because again, we want to keep these under an hour, but at the same time, like we talked about Ruben Bain for a little bit, we talked about Jadarian Price for a little bit. So maybe we just do a couple more draft episodes where we're just hopping along the draft, talking about players' impacts. But yeah, like we said, we're gonna cover draft content for you guys again for the next month or so. We talked about how we're gonna kind of collab a lot all throughout the season. We're gonna expand a little bit. I'm gonna talk about a little bit more NFL with Kenny that I'm gonna post even on the college football podcast and make it a little more of a general podcast. And Kenny as well said that he's gonna talk a little more college football and throw that on his as well. So a little more diverse and jumping into each other's podcast. But
Yeah, no, it's a big week too for the NFL because the schedule's coming out. I know we've had, some leaks and, some postings, as to certain games that will be, taking place. Giants and the Cowboys opening up on Sunday night, first, Sunday night game of the year. Eagles and Cowboys will be playing on Thanksgiving. But yeah, we'll get more of an idea of what the rest of the schedule is. It'll be coming out on Thursday, so looking forward to that. But that pretty much wraps it up. We are going to continue to talk a kind of similar, similar topic, like Dami said. Kind of going through the draft and other players that maybe we haven't touched upon yet. Any players that maybe if you throw a comment in that you want us to give our thoughts, we can also do that as well. But that pretty much wraps it up. So as always, everybody, I'm your host Kenneth Gruenfelder, along with Don Matassa here. Have a good one, and we will talk to you guys next time.